Our final feature for tonight is Murray Silverstein. Murray's third book of poems is called Red Studio. His first collection, Any Old Wolf, 2007, was the winner of Independent Publishers' Bronze Medal for Poetry and was followed by Master of Leaves, 2014. Murray's poems have appeared in numerous journals including Rattle, ZYZZYVA, the MacGuffin, the Brooklyn Review, West Marin Review, Plainsongs, Nimrod, The Dreaming Machine, and Spillway. A practicing architect for 40 years and co-author of 4 books on architecture, including A Pattern Language and Patterns of Home, Silverstein lives in Oakland. Please welcome Murray Silverstein.
Thank you, Sandy and Rivertown Poets. What an honor to be here on your anniversary. Really impressed by the tradition. This is the third book from 16 Rivers, and I realized thinking about the reading today that I was lucky to have the same press to do 3 books with, because I got to think of them as a trilogy. So I wanted to read a poem from each of the first 2 as a kind of, to try to get a feel for the flow of that. The first one was called Any Old Wolf. It was my first book. I had been an architect for many years. Began writing in my 50s, so around the age of 60, the first book came out, so that was a real thrill. And the opening poem of that book is called, the title poem, Any Old Wolf. I always wanted to try to start this poem with a kind of call and response, so let me try that tonight. Old MacDonald had a farm. Puzzled by all that E-I-E-I-O business on Old MacDonald's farm, I once thought vowels were feed, like hay or slop. And therefore the critters cried neigh or moo, oink or ba. They needed to be fed. They came with consonants, like teeth, but vowels came from the man. And when night fell, wild ones crept around the barn to nab their share. That famous wolf in silhouette against the famous moon is howling back his vowels in praise. It's good to be among the fed. The sadness in his note is need. Ah, to need, he howls, but oh, to be well fed. He believes his W, his L, and his F are mortal, but his O grew from a seed that fell once from the moon. I know, just any old wolf, but I eat of the I eternal, and so I at the oo, which also is eternal. I took in a T from the teat of my mom, but hunt the great farm for my EIO. Thank you. So that was a childhood reminiscence. And Master of Leaves has a bunch of poems like that too. And I want to read a short one from this book. Along with the sort of way the poems tell stories in the book as you begin to collect them about your life and experience, every so often one poem sort of backs up and observes you, the poet, writing this kind of stuff. And this is a short one, which is one of those observations. Adult fiction. There is a book called The Child. Everyone has a copy, but it's never been read. You mean to find yours, sit down someday and give it a look. The blurbs say it's terrific. You laugh, you cry. A signed first edition. But where did you put it? Where did it go? That's from Master of Leaves. And then the book that came out last spring, Red Studio, also I could say something similar, that the title comes from a painting by Matisse, a painting I'd loved. I'd never seen it, but I'd seen it in books, and there's lots of info about it online and so on. And it's a painting where he steps back mid-career and looks at the studio that he's been painting in. And he paints that studio with all the things in it, including the paintings that he's working on and the ones that are finished. And it's that kind of space that I realized assembling a book of poems creates for you, the poet, but I think we try to imbue that sense of space to your readers. And I just read the other day, in the introduction to the original Gerard Mann Hopkins collection, Robert Bridges says something like, that thing that is created, that spirit that's created by a book of poems, Hopkins called the inscape. That was his word. I thought, some of you know that about Hopkins, and I just thought that's such a wonderful word, and that's kind of what I meant by this giving. As I wrote the poem about the Matisse painting, then thinking that that space was what the whole book was ought to be titled. The Red Studio. In L'Atelier Rouge, a painting of Matisse's studio in which he paints his paintings hanging from the walls, the cat on the floor of the painting is not a painting of a painting. Nor, when I look closely, is it a cat. It's a painting of a hand-painted plate. My head begins to spin. And I look at the goblet beside the plate, which looks to be outlined in white. But it's inlined, really. What appears to be outlined is only the canvas beneath. That is so cool. I think, lifting it to my lips. But it's empty of all but color, that astonishing, blinding red that all but devours the room. It's mystifying, terrifying even, learning to give and receive love. The color surrounding the man with his head in his hand and the woman reclining alone. He was nearly done, they tell us, with L'Atelier Rouge, when, without thinking, he let loose the red. One big manic swing, a man reaching out and in, for where there is no more, more. Oh, happy accident from which all our bright unhappiness flows. The case for punctuation. Periods are gods. Semicolons, angels. The commas, their wings. It's the words that are always wrong. Sinful and broken, intoxicatingly other than what is meant. What does the wound remember? This morning, low tide, the gulls gliding over the water is wrong. But the commas are wings, the line breaks are days of creation, the gulls, and now the geese rising as one to suture the sky. Periods are gods, the M dash, their prophet. Words, the pilgrims on their knees, asking to be forgiven. Thank you. I grew up in Los Angeles. You can tell I'm not a farm boy. My father was a traveling salesman. He died about 40 years ago. He died broke. And I'm thinking of this, reading this poem today, I realized when I said that to myself, I said, I'll say that. I realized I was hearing it in two senses, both in the tragic sense, he had a real hard end, and in the sense that he was penniless. But about 20 years, 30 years later, I had this dream. It's called Dream of My Father Demanding a Raise. And this is one of those dreams that I think about all the time. it just, I couldn't get, I had to write a poem about it, but then I thought about it continuously, and just thinking about it today, I had a new thought. But let me read the poem first. Dream of my father demanding a raise. My father, perched on a rickety wooden ladder, leaning against the garage, on the phone with his boss, arguing over salary. Dad saying, sure, I'll get through this recession on savings if I must, but when things turn around, I've got to have a raise. 50 grand a month at least, he shouts into the phone. You know, I know this business called. What business? I have no idea. A dead salesman can't go back on the road. But it fills me with joy to hear him demanding we slap high fives as he climbs down. You kicked his ass, Pa. And he takes me in his arms and leads me in a stagger waltz around the yard, whispering, it wouldn't have killed us to, when beep goes the alarm, and leave me be, I beg the gods of waking. Can't you see he wants to stay? But no, he's gone, the ladder's gone, and loss is the boss, the big and final cheese. But what, of what, is loss the boss, if not happiness? My thought today when I was thinking about reading that poem was, the ladder is the raise. This is obvious. He's asking for the raise, and the raise is out of the difficulties and cruelties of life to an acceptance of happiness. But the moments when that's true, and that's loss is the boss, but it's the boss of happiness. Anyway, it dawned on me. I didn't get it. I have been with my wife for 65 years. We pause in and of itself. Anyway, we met in '64 at Berkeley. At our 50th anniversary, this was the poem I wrote. It's called Coral, and it's about coral, which if I understood it right from the science, the deeper coral is in the ocean, the brighter are its colors. And nobody knew why that was, but a woman scientist I was reading about this years ago developed the theory which became the Kahneman wisdom of how that could be true. Coral, on our 50th anniversary, some sun reaches the deeper you go, but only the weakest spectral blue. So it takes 1 billion years. But coral gives shelter to algae, while algae makes protein for coral from light. The protein that makes the skeletons glow, all those oranges and yellows and brilliant reds. Each feeds each. What light there is, the deeper you go. And it takes time, but everything's finally on fire. For a short one, well, what I'd like to do is, and I want to make a pitch for a project that 16 Rivers is working on for a minute after I finish with Red Studio. This book begins with an epigram from a poet who I dearly love, Wisława, if I'm pronouncing it right, Szymborska, the great Polish poet. And I always think of this little epigram as following the title. So Red Studio, poems. But what sort of thing is poetry? Many a shaky answer has been given to this question. But I do not know. And I do not know and hold on to it as to a saving banister. Love that. And the last poem of this book, which came out when I turned 80, is called The Banister.
Okay. For
Szymborska. The banister. I used to run my hand along it lightly, barely touching. Was it even there? Now, waking early, reaching for it in the dark, I grab hard. Praise the oak from which it came, its smooth and varnished self, easing my way down. As with all of me, I lean into the dawn to listen for the groan of bolt to stud and know the very start, the very spot where it will sound. Thank you for listening to me read the poems, and thank you, 16 Rivers, for giving me the opportunity to fashion in poetry a kind of banister for my old age. That's how I've come to think of this.
Very nice.
And I want to just make a quick pitch before I end here. In 2016, after Trump's election, the press got a small grant. And the grantor suggested we develop an anthology that was a response to that moment, November 2016. And I, with others in the press, set out to collect two groups of poems. One from an open submission to poets across the country, saying at this moment, the spring 2017, send us a poem about what's going on. And we got about 2,000 poems that way, an open solicitation. And we also asked every poet we knew to go to their library and pick poems from any time, Du Fu, Homer, yesterday, that spoke to this moment, because a lot of poets have lived through crises, political, cultural turmoil. And we wanted to hear what poems that meant something to them that way. And we got a bunch of poems that way too. And the book was formed out of those two groups of poems. It's called America, We Call Your Name. The title comes from the Neruda poem, which is actually called America, I Do Not Call Your Name Without Hope. America non invoco tu nombre in vano. A poem that, and the theme of the book in some ways was the conversation going on between poets of our moment, that was 2017, 18, 19, and poets of the past. That was an interesting poem. That was the poem that was responding to that Neruda poem was a Dean Rader poem, which he was writing a poem in conversation with Neruda. I'm not going to read it, but I just wanted to say that when the book came out, we discovered after a while that it got into some classrooms. High schools were using it. And when we learned that, we contacted more and more high school students and started, because of our grant, we're able to give them books to classes, and began to hear that some students were writing, because of the conversational nature of the book, poems in response. So we started a project which was a national contest where the first 100 teenagers who entered were sent a book, this America We Call Your Name, and invited to submit a poem to that. They did. We got 100 poems. We pulled together a chapbook called Anthems. Teen poets respond to America We Call Your Name. And this generated so much energy around the people that were doing this that we ended up having workshops and invitations for others to read. And this became the second book, Our Own Light. Teen poets respond again to America We Call Your Name and Anthem. So it's become this ongoing conversation. There's a third volume about to come out, and we're trying to think where it goes from here, because sadly, here we are again, back at a time when a book like this is profoundly relevant. Okay, so I wanted to just tell you that this material is here. I was interested to hear Sandy talking about the work with kids in schools. We're doing the same, and if you have any thoughts about how to build on this, or would like to take a look at it, see me or come take it.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Murray.
Yeah.
Another round of applause for Murray, Christina, and Alice. Wonderful readings, all really different and really, really beautiful. Thank you so much. I did forget to announce that we have a Facebook page. It's a long story, but it's four words, New Rivertown Poets. You can find all our latest announcements there. We also have a YouTube channel where there are over 125 recordings now. And Alice, Christina, and Murray's will be up there. I'm not going back home till Thursday, so I'll get it edited next weekend. And those are all for public viewing.